So hello, good people of the internet. This is Tommy Kelly, and this is, of course, the Tommy Kelly podcast. And on this episode, I want to talk about something that I get an awful lot of questions about, an awful lot of people talk to me about. Obviously enough, because it's something I've become well known for, or in some way synonymous with the thing, and that's servitors. And I'm just going to explain a bit about what servitors are, or how I view them. Other opinions are available. Many other opinions are available. And then address some of the things that you hear, some of the dangers, if you want, of servitors that people, suggest, or you come back, and people are quite scared of servitors or leaving them for too long, all those type of things. And then I'll go through how to create one, leaving it as open as possible to make yourself a bit, to do as creatively or as whatever way you want. But some of the kind of beats or points that you probably will need to make a servitor. And this will be generally rambly, as is my style. And probably, I'll miss out some things that I want to talk about or whatever. But hopefully, overall, it'll give you a good understanding of servitors and how to use them. And then you can go out and actually make some yourself and experiment with them. Because that's the best way to learn magic or to do magic, is literally to just do magic and see how it works. Because I get a lot of questions from people go, can you do this? Or what would happen if you do this? What would happen if this? And you go, my response usually is, and I don't mean to be flippant, and I try to say it in the friendliest way as possible, is do it and see what happens. And if it works, do it again. And if it doesn't work, change it and try it again, or drop it and don't do it anymore. What works for me magically mightn't work for you, and what works for you mightn't work for me. And the only way you are really going to know what works is by doing this type of thing. So, you should be as practical with your magic as much as possible, rather than the armchair magician or the armchair occultist. Do these things. So I would say, have a listen to this rambly, meandering talk on servitors, and then go make one as soon as possible. Doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be something very small, some small idea. It doesn't have to be, magic doesn't have to be big, grandiose statements or big desires or whatever. Make something small if you want, or make the big ones or whatever. And then see for yourself, and then change it and augment it, and polish it until you have a good kind of servitor method that works really well for you. Or you may find that you do some servitors and go, not into them, not for me. Other magic works much better for me, and that's perfectly cool and that's great. But at least you'll know, rather than just thinking, that wouldn't work for me or whatever. At least you'll definitely know. Sigils work great for some people. Servitors work great for other people. Goetic, the goetic stuff works, the demonology, all that works for other people. You just have to find out what it is. There's often, I've thought about this, and I've seen other people talk about it recently as well, that what, if we're like in an RPG game, and we all have our different attributes and stats, and you could be going around trying all you want to be, a servitor guy, but it's really your natural abilities or sigils, or you're a diviner, your divination. That's your RPG stat, or that's your class. So you have to find these things. Go try these different things out. So enough blabble. Let's get into the main meandering bits, and over to me talking about servitors. So obviously enough, one of the things I get asked about by people is about servitors. And of course, being the person that created a number of servitors that have become well known, it's a legitimate enough question. On the website, I do have a section in the Magic Primer that is about servitors. But I thought I'd do in the podcast, what I'd go through today would be to explain how I make servitors, or not necessarily how I make them, but how I think you should make them, or how you could make them, or how to make servitors in general. So the first time I ever came across the idea of a servitor was a long time ago, when I was in my mid-20s. So we're talking 15 years ago, something like that. And I was at college, and I was doing the alternative health studies, or holistic studies. And in one of the classes in Reiki, when we were doing that, it just, the idea came up about having, an energy form or something like that, or using a kind of a thing. And it wasn't quite Servitor or Tulpa or any of these things. And at that point, I started looking up a bit about it on the internet. And what I found mostly was tulpas. And this idea that you could create, in a sense, an imaginary friend. And if you go to our Reddit and you go to our Tulpa, Tulpas, I think, you search around for tulpas, you'll come across a whole subdomain or subreddit that's all about tulpas, and about basically people having a very intimate relationship or very deep relationship with imaginary friends that they call tulpas. And it's not necessarily what tulpas originally were. There's it's a Tibetan. I'll get this wrong. If you want to know exactly what tulpas are, ask Jason Miller, because he's always banging on about how people get them wrong. But it's is it a Tibetan Buddhist type thing where it's not like an imaginary friend. There's more to it. The kind of idea that we have about tulpas comes from Theosophy and from Madame Blavatsky and her kind of bastardization of the whole idea. So anyway, going back on to the point. So when I was in around that, I was doing holistic health studies and stuff, what I found was that I tried toying with this idea of having an imaginary animal it was an animal, it was a lion, and that would in some sense be a companion or a protector. Now, it was just an experiment. It was just to see what the story was, what would happen. And I've become very aware of the whole thing of that, if you should only have them for a certain amount of time, because if you leave them for too long, they go bad. And I did actually, in a sense, kind of get that, but not bad in that it wrecked my life. Just that it started my thoughts, whatever, it would mutate, and I couldn't keep concentrating on it and that kind of thing. And I got a kind of a bad frustration feeling out of it rather than a bad feeling from it. I just couldn't sustain it in my head longer than a couple of days, rather than it started wrecking my life and causing havoc and some sort of poltergeist activity or any of that sort of things. So that was kind of my first foray into the whole kind of thought form thing that later up Servitor. So then years later, when I came back and I got into magic and stuff like that, I started looking at Servitors again, and I really liked the idea of them. And it's kind of the first thing you have to ask: so what is the difference between a sigil and a Servitor? And I guess you have to throw in a talisman into that mix to really kind of talk about it. A sigil. These can all be whatever they want. Like this kind of in this kind of explanation, we'll say that a sigil is like a one-time deal. I want a pay rise. I want to have sex. I want to, I don't know, free travel, something like that, where you have one desire, do a sigil, fire the sigil, get your desire. Whereas a talisman is kind of a long-term kind of thing. Increased prosperity, increased luck, increased health. So it could still be a sigil in the form of sigil, but it becomes talismanic because it's more than one. It's an ongoing thing you kind of want. And that's kind of what a talisman is. Talisman is like, you get like, good luck, charms, these type of things. So it's an ongoing kind of sigil, if you want, or it's an ongoing magic, enchantment. So a servitor then is neither of those things, although has elements of both of them, in that it's kind of a thing. It's a thought form that you've encapsulated in like you've delineated, you've made it exactly what you want it to be. You've confined it to an idea, to a description, and it that then goes out and does whatever you desire it to be. And people ask me, has it got agency, or has it got independence, free? Actually, more is that, has it got free will? And it all depends on if you give it free will or not. For the most part, I would say don't give your servitors free will unless you want to give your servitors free will, because then you're getting into the whole thing of, can you control them, or if the free will, are they going to do what you've set them to do, or are they going to start changing their nature and evolve and all that? And so when I was doing 47, I certainly made it a case that they weren't going to evolve, they weren't going to be able to change in nature, they weren't going to fundamentally change anything of themselves. From what they were, they're going to remain. They'll become more powerful and better at what they do, but they're not going to change. Like the healer is not going to suddenly become a mechanic, or the healer is not suddenly going to become a poltergeist that's going to start wrecking your house or throwing books off your bookshelf, which people have this issue about servitors at the start, like causing like mischief in their house and physical things and bringing bad luck and all that kind of thing. So one big thing that when you're making a servitor is, define what it is, what its boundaries are, what you want and what you don't want it to do. So the difference then between a sigil and a talisman and a servitor is that there is this kind of a personality, if you want, or flavour added to it. The sigil is just kind of just dry, and it's a desire, a want that you put out. There's no kind of it's aesthetically, that's just it. That's what it is. There's no personality to it. Whereas servitor has some sort of personality or some sort of flavour, a bit thing to it. That's not quite it either, but it's but it's not also has this thing that it can be an ongoing thing, but it also can be a single use. You could make a servitor just to find €50 or $50, whatever, or to get that job promotion or any of those things. But usually servitors are more talismanic in nature, where they're for ongoing things like increased prosperity, increased healing. That's sort of the servitor goes out into the world and finds opportunities for you, that you increase your prosperity. So that's how I would see it. It has a bit more of a personality, but not necessarily free will. It's kind of, I see servitors very similar to how, if you, as a writer, you would create a character. It has a character to it. But that that doesn't mean then that it takes over. Like, even to the point where I talked about before, where when you write a story, the characters, in a sense, seem to have a life of their own. And, you can let that happen, and, they can surprise you and stuff like that. They still don't have agency, because it's still you. It's still part of you, and you're still writing it and all that kind of. It's just like your writing process. And that's kind of how it's servitor. So it's still, in a sense, coming from you in many ways. It's your energy, if you want. If you're an energetic model type person, it's using or whatever. So it's not that it then becomes a completely separate agent. That's how I see it, anyway. That when I use the healer, I'm using a part of me. When you use the healer, you're using a part of you. Does the healer have an actual space on her own, where she is independent and all that? I don't think so. The healer does not exist outside of people who know who they are, who know what the 40 servants are. And so I think you're tapping into I see it certainly is tapping into your own healing ability using the archetype, or the idea, or the thought form of the healer. So when you share servitors in the way that 40 servants are shared, then I think it's your energy rather than an independent, sovereign, autonomous energy that is the healer. So that's kind of my thoughts of all of that. So that the difference between the things. What is servitor? It's a thought form. It's a thing that you create, an idea that you inject into the world in order to change something, or to get a desire, or something you want. Similar to a sigil to a talisman, other than there's a different flavour to it. It has a sort of a personality, but it wouldn't go so far as to say it has autonomy or sovereignty. Is sovereign or has free will, or those type of things, and probably you should aim not to have that, just because your mind can start playing tricks on you and stuff, and it feels like some people report to get out of hand. I don't think they do, but that's what you have to be aware of, because it's a thing that's spoken an awful lot about servitors. And servitors are different from tulpas in the way that Jason Miller would explain it better than I would. And they're different from imaginary friends, in that there's a magical purpose to it. There's a desire to it, where imaginary friends is just for something that's company maybe, but it's not all overlap. All of these things, it's all grey. It's all grey areas. There's no actual exact point where things stop being. When does a sigil stop being a sigil, and when does it become a talisman? What's the exact words or the exact point, and when is it a servitor and all that? I personally think it's the intent behind it, your intention behind it. I intend to do a sigil, I intend to make this a talisman, I intend to make a servitor. So intention for me, being that I have an idealistic magical model outlook, in that it's all consciousness, it's all, we're all in a field of consciousness, kind of an information model idealism kind of thing. So you've to come up with a servitor, you obviously have to have an idea of what you want. What do you want to do? What is it that you're trying to create? One of the most common ones is a protection servitor that you'd have, say, for the house. So that your house is protected from bad guys coming in, stealing stuff, or from weather damage, or from general anything that would be protecting. So that you've come up with your idea, but it can be for anything. It can be, I'd say, for increased prosperity, increased health, increased intelligence, whatever, like better at photography, better at art, a muse in that kind of a sense. More energy, get a trainer kind of servitor to help you get fit and help you lose weight and all that kind of stuff. So the thing that I personally find, or I would suggest, is the difference between a tulpa and a servitor. Again, it's with the common thought of what a tulpa is, as opposed to what a tulpa actually is. The thought form thing of tulpa and the thought form servitor is that a servitor you should house it in something, whereas a tulpa is just a thought form created just in the head. As far as for the sake of this argument, let's say that's what it is. And the reason why I think things might go bad and tulpas might go bad is because they have no focal point or no focus point or no place that homes or embodies them. And so they become a free-form thought, and as all thoughts are, then to progress into something else, to evolve and all that, because it's just a thought. In the same way that if you think enough about a situation, you start, it starts changing. It's like thoughts are malleable in that kind of way, and they can change. Whereas if you have a focus, if you have a thing, they become more stable. So that's why you'll find an awful lot of people put them in statues. The embodiment of this. The servitor is in a statue, or in like an action figure, or a doll, or a stone, or a drawing, or a card, or any of these things. But it has to have, I feel it has to have a sort of an embodiment, a physical representation that is its home, or its focal point, its base. But like in the case of an image, there can be loads of different versions of that image. Or a sigil, or any of these things like the 47 are. So that, it doesn't have to be just a rock on your altar, or a statue, or those type of things. But I do think it's important to have some physical thing of it, so it's not just a thought. And it gives it a bit more weight, and a bit more reality, and a bit more power behind it, I find. So the other thing you have to then decide is, so what is it going to, what it's for, you've given it a home, and so you have to then come up with it. It has to be given energy in some way to sustain itself, to move along, to do the things it's meant to be doing. And it's called feeding the servitor, and servitors need to be fed. But you don't overthink these things. People, when you talk about these things, get into the whole, well, you have to sacrifice, and, that leads to very weird places with people, and, they get into people go very dark very quick with magic, and I try to keep them away from it. That's not to say that there's no darkness in the world or darkness in magic, but it's just there's no need to go to the dark places so quick, and people have a tendency to do that, or people who I interact with in magic circles have a tendency to do that. So feeding it can be anything. Feeding it to me, I'll light a candle for you when you're successful in what you have done. You can blow into it to give it a bit of your own energy, which will come back. From like a Reiki energy healing sense, you can actually physically, spiritually, whatever, send it energy. You can offer it like things that you have if you're doing, like say you have a servitor, servitor that help you with your weightlifting. You can feed it the energy of the session, the weightlifting session that you're going to do, that in the way that you would dedicate your practice. So you're doing yoga, and you can dedicate your practice to whatever it is. You can dedicate your weightlifting or your gym session to the servitor, or even I've heard talk of people, I dedicate or I give my sweat, and all these things, anything at all that you think is appropriate to feed, that they would get sustenance from to continue onwards. So think about exactly what. Try and do something that is beneficial to it and to yourself. The 47 are fed on attention, and I think that's great, because the more attention you give it, the more powerful it become, and it's not a hard thing to do to give a servitor attention. So when you've come up with what it is, when you have come up with where you're going to home it, how you're going to feed it, Decide for a bit what, have some rules, you don't do this, I don't want you to do this, really delineate and really put it down what you want. So like if it's a money servitor, say, well, I don't want anyone to be physically harmed out of it. If that's what you don't want people, I don't want anyone to die to bring money. So I don't want you to do that. You have to come up with other ways, but don't choke it so much that I can't do anything. It's that whole thing. If you don't harm anyone, but like everything harms someone, like in a sense, like harming someone is, like doing a day's work is harming you physically if it's a physical job. So like, I mean, there's harm in everything. So you have to word it kind of differently around that to kind of just kind of, whatever it is you want that you want them to do without, don't start again. So basically, people be scared and people be worried about that if I make money magic that my auntie's going to die and that's how I'm going to get it, because this whole idea of the line of least resistance, and I get the inheritance from my auntie. It's huge magic and massive magic to kill someone and to that. So like to think that you're gonna start with magic, get it together, and kill your auntie, like it's not likely. Now I'm not ruling it out either, but it's not likely. So in that case, say I don't want anyone to actually die and inherit the money, that way from unnatural causes or whatever. These things. Put in a bit of rules. I would also suggest that you put in a self-destruct thing. Like say you've decided that have an ongoing kind of talismanic servitor, and at some stage down the road you want to go, well, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to have this anymore. I'm doing other magic. I've become a Christian and I think magic is wrong. Whatever your reasoning is to stop wanting to do it or having it, put in something in the creation of it that becomes a rule that it leads to its destruction. So like you can go, if I smash this stone, smash this statue, if I burn this drawing or whatever it is, then you're gone, you've ceased to exist, you go back to wherever it was you came from before I created you. All of these things. So have some sort of fail-safe thing that if in the future you want rid of it, then you can destroy them. I have all the 40 servants, the original ones, in the box on my altar. And technically, I could probably destroy them all if I really wanted to. I can't imagine I would. But it was in my thought. I think there is a physical element to the 40 servants too that could be destroyed. But again, there would have to be an intentional element of it. Like say my house burnt down, touch wood, and they were burnt. Would the servitors be destroyed? Would the 40 servants be gone? I don't think so, because the intention wouldn't be there of trying to destroy them. But worth considering and worth thinking about, and come up to your own conclusions about it. So then you have to give it life. Then you have to, activate it. You have to do whatever. You have to do something that's going to activate it and make it real and make it, the actual magic of it. There's plenty of ways to do that. Do a little ceremony that marks the occasion. Do a dance. Or you can do things like, again, blowing the air into it, like your breath into it. That's what I did with the 4 servants, was blow air into it, giving it some life force, like the first bit of life, and then it became self-sustaining. Again, you can do the energy thing, like if you're from like an energy healing, Reiki type thing, pushing the energy into it. You can do things, of course, like where you can, masturbate and all that type of stuff. I've never found that particularly... One, I didn't find it particularly magically satisfying in a sense. It felt a bit stupid, which could just be my hang-ups. But I never found that effective, even with sigils or stuff like that, the whole wank activation thing. But it certainly works for some people. So if that's your, if you're into that and that works for you, then certainly go with that. And again, you could probably do it with blood in the way that, runes are kind of done with blood to activate them in a sense. Or, a rune set. But I've talked before about blood magic. It's not... it shouldn't be your go-to. It shouldn't be the first thing you do. Do some other stuff first. It should always be like kind of a last resort thing, because there's nowhere else you can go. There's nowhere you can up your game, really, without getting to super dark places. So stay away from the blood magic. I suggest. You do as thou wilt. And then, after all that, when you've put the energy in and you've done all that, then you have to have some sort of intentional moment where you let it go out into the world and let it do its thing. And then you keep your end of the bargain when if you've money servitor and money comes in, and you feed it and you give it feedback or whatever from whatever your offerings, these type of things. So, excuse me, just having a drink. So the main sort of concerns about servitors people have, again, that they will start going nasty, start going bad. I've never found this. 40 servants have certainly not done this. And I said before, the only kind of thing that remotely echoes that is that tulpa 15 years ago, and that was more of a frustration than annoyance. It didn't do anything to my life. It didn't attack me. It didn't change anything. It was just that I couldn't keep the idea of it in my head long enough, and it kept changing, like the image of it that I had in my head, because I was trying it to be a lion that was following me around, and it would turn into other animals and stuff like that, and I just couldn't. It's like when I'm trying to visualize, that happens to me as well. Like, say I'm trying to visualize a room, the room will keep changing, and the window or something will change, or the floor will change, or the perspective changes, that kind of thing. I find that quite frustrating, and that frustrating. But certainly in all my dealings with servitors, I've never had a case of them going bad or coming against me, whatever. But I do stress, because so many people talk about it, and so many people mention it as something that they are concerned about. And anyone I know, and there's only a few who've ever said that they have had servitors going wrong, are people who in general, their lives are a bit of a mess anyhow, are a bit chaotic and a bit, susceptible to, to a bit of anarchy or a bit of chaos or a bit of stuff falling about the place. If you're imbalanced as it is, and you're doing these servitor things, it's less likely that anything bad is going to happen. But no guarantees. Magic is not safe by any means, and it's not something that you should take lightly either. So it should be there in the back of mind. It's a wide enough idea or thought that servitors can go bad that it's worth you investigating your own thing. My personal experiences, they never have. Then, just be very sure about what you want them to do, what their boundaries are, what they're meant to do. What is it that you actually want them to do? That can be quite hard, in that it can go, general money, but money in what way? Do you want, like, increased, do you want more work? Like, so, like, you could go, you have a servitor that'll get you more, increased wages, say, but it involves you getting an awful lot more work. So you have to be very kind of, with all magic, you have to, be fairly specific, but at the same time being as open to thing as possible. Like, one of the first things people all do when they come to magic, and wild magic in particular, is to try to win the lottery. And the thing about it, it's unlikely, highly unlikely. And if magic is enhancement or probability enhancement, then you certainly can enhance your probability of winning the lottery from 1 billion to 1 to 100,000 million to 1, or whatever. You're still not going to win the lottery, but your magic has worked. Again, it's unfalsifiable and all that thing. Probability enhancement sounds like a good thing of magic. I'm not so sure it is. But say you want to win the lotto. Well, why do you want to win the lotto? You want to win the lotto because you want to have more money. Well, just make your servitor for more money. Like, don't limit the magic by saying I want to win the lottery. Money from whatever, money from good places, money that makes me feel like I like what my magic is to, rather than not, money without people dying, money without increased work, or whatever it is. I don't mind work. You think, say, money from a happy place. Money, an unexpected payment that makes me feel joyous. That sort of things, like, because then you're ruling out any of the negative stuff in many ways, because if the money comes, you're going to feel good about it. And if your auntie has died and left you some money, chances are you're not going to feel good about it. But maybe you will. Maybe that's the type of person you are. I don't know. Maybe it all depends on what type of person the auntie is. So that's kind of it. The servitors they're interesting and definitely worth messing with, or investigating, or experimenting with, is the word I'm looking for. And you will find some people find servitors work really well for them. Some people find sigils work really well for them, and other people find that none of them work well for them. People go, "Oh, how long do I have to wait for things to work? How long do you have to wait for anything to work in magic?" It's going to be different for everyone. But you should see some success or lack of success in your servitor fairly quickly, That's with all magic. But there's a million other reasons why things don't work in magic. Mostly it'll be you, or if you're like me, it'll be you, and in some way you're kind of blocking things, rather than the magic not actually working. So finally it comes down to the thing I was touching on earlier on. What are servitors? What are they? They're quite woo-woo, and they're quite thing because it's like creating an imaginary friend. In a large way, if you're explaining it to someone who's not into magic, that's what it sounds like. And that you have a thought form that goes out in the world that does something and affects and change your life. But think of it in one way of like, say we're in the Matrix. I'm not saying we're in the Matrix, but just for this, go with this for the moment. A servitor would be like injecting a program into the Matrix to change something, to get a desire you want. That's the way I see it. And it's an ongoing program. In the way in the Matrix, you have certain characters that are within the Matrix, and they to me would be servitors, like the Oracle or the other kung fu dudes, and then the guy with the key and all that kind of stuff. They're kind of servitors within the Matrix, and that's how I'd see them within the thing. Not obviously, I don't think we're programs. I'm not one for the that theory. What's that theory? We're all in a computer program. That word that won't come to my mind at the minute. My brain is getting so bad recently where there's just words that will not come into my mind. Or whatever. The simulation, that we're living in a simulation. I'm not one for that, although I do like it as an idea, and as a workable magical idea, I find it very good, but I don't ultimately think that. In the sense of, well, I do have an idealism outlook where I think it's all conscious, so it's kind of similar, but I don't think we're... But you see, the thing about idealism versus the simulation theory is that the simulation would still involve that there is some materialistic universe somewhere where we're sitting on someone's shelf in a computer, whereas idealism would say that it's all consciousness, it's all an illusion, all Maya, it's all a dream, which is where I currently find myself. So that's kind of it on servitors. I'm sure I'm missing things out, and I'm sure I'm not answering a lot of questions. So it's basically, in conclusion, to go back over it, come up with what you want. Come up with the idea of why you're making a servitor. Come up with how you're going to feed the servitor. Find something you can put it in, like a stone, a statue, a drawing, anything, something like that. So, home, an embodiment of it. Put in some sort of self-destruct thing where you can decide, if I don't want to have this in the future, how I can stop it. And then give it life in some sort of ceremony or some sort of intention where, blowing air into it, blowing energy into it, giving it energy. I don't baptize it. The 47's got done with the different elements, so that's an idea too. Earth, air, fire, water. Have representations, give them that. Some sort of intentional thing. And then the final one is you let it go and you set it on its way and you do the thing. And when it does its thing, you do whatever deal you have. You feed it whatever offering you have decided, or whatever food you've decided to feed it with. So yeah. That was another episode of the Tommy Kelly podcast, and I have to say I do enjoy doing these, and I am really appreciative of your feedback. I said recently in one of the last ones that I wish I was better at them and stuff, and I got an awful lot of nice messages and stuff saying that people do like what I do, and that's really nice, and that's I take that very much. It makes me feel good, and I do wish I was better, but more for me and for you having to listen to it or whatever. I wish that I was a bit more articulate in my ideas, but I suppose I could sit down and write all this stuff out and have point by point by point and do it. But I find when people do that, and especially when I do it, it becomes very flat and boring, and it's just as if someone's reading off a page. Some people are really good at it and can put an awful lot of life and energy into reading bullet points and stuff like that. I tend to keep my notes, if I do have notes, as loose as possible, and just kind of riff on the idea and see what comes out and stuff like that. Because, again, as I say, stress that I started doing the podcast to become better at speaking, because it was not something I was really good at, and something I found very kind of stressful or anxious, and it would make me anxious if someone asked me, will you be on my podcast, I'd go, oh no, what can I don't know how to talk, I don't know how to articulate my ideas, I don't know what my ideas are. Really, what if someone asked me a question, I don't know the answer. So I thought I would do the podcast so that I would just start talking and start getting it out and see what came out. And sometimes stuff comes out as well. But what I find is what happens is, like, there to talk about servitors, I now have a better appreciation of what I think servitors are about than I did before I did the podcast. So it's much as it's learning. Say if you don't know anything about servitors, or you haven't come across before, that you may have learned something from that podcast how to do them. But I have too, and I am clearer in my understanding of these things. So if you want, my hyper sigil of the podcast is to have a greater understanding of the things I talk about. So it's a learning thing for me as well. It's not. So I certainly don't see myself as any sort of a teacher or whatever. But I do know that you don't really understand something until you try to explain it to someone else. Or what is probably more likely is that you don't realize how much you don't understand something until you try to explain something to someone else. So you can say, well, I have a fair idea of sigils or servitors or the Goetia. And then someone who knows nothing about it says, tell me a bit about the Goetia. And you go, well, and then you don't really have it formulated in your head what it is. You have kind of all these rough ideas going around your head what it all is, but it's not in any way structured. And that's fine, I suppose. You don't have to have all these things structured, but it's interesting then when you try to explain things, or when you try to verbalize it or vocalize things, how not all put together your ideas about magic or whatever it is, whatever topic it is. We just talked about magic here in this podcast. So what I probably should do at some stage in the future is look back on some of the things I've talked about before, and how my ideas have changed or have become more articulate from having done the podcast or the blog posts or whatever it is. But we're about 70-ish podcasts in, so there's plenty still to talk about before going back and talking about other things as well. But anyway, I just thought I would explain a bit about me and my process and stuff like this. This is the apology section of the podcast, as regular listeners will know, where I apologize for my futility and my lack of, my lack of being perfect, I suppose. So if you want to listen to more imperfect podcasts, then go to TommyKellyPodcast.com, and all the podcasts are there. It's on SoundCloud, that's where it's hosted. But you can get it in iTunes, you can get it in Pocket Cast, you can get it in Castbox, Stitcher, all of these places. And there's the RSS feed there, so in theory, no matter what podcatcher you're using, you can, it should just, catch it, as is a podcatcher's want. I do other stuff. I have videos, which I do on YouTube. At the minute, the main thrust of all the videos is the 40 Servants video course, which is gradually getting back up to speed with. We're coming near the end of it too, in a sense. We're getting into the latter half of the cards. I was going through each card and talking a bit about it. There's about 37, 38 videos there at the minute. And once I get through the cards, I will do a couple of videos on how to use them. There is videos at the beginning of what is magic and the 40 Servants, and describes all of that kind of stuff, but I'll possibly do a divination reading and that kind of thing at the end, so it won't just be when I get to the end of the cards, that'll be it. But after that, I probably want to get into more stuff, and I want to kind of expand a bit more, not necessarily have all the videos about the 40 Servants and all that, about magic in general and occultism and all that. So you can check that out. If you go to adventuresinwoowoo.com, that's my kind of hub, my blog. Excuse me, I am riffing again. My humblest apologies. Blame this Coke Zero. I'm still on the Coke Zero. I'm addicted. So Adventures in Woowoo, that's the blog. That's where everything is, and all the links to there. So for the podcast, for the 40 Servants video course, everything you could possibly want to know about the 40 Servants is actually there, even including how to use it for free, how to use them all for free. It's all there. That's going to be getting an update soon. I want to change the artwork, and I want to get it so it looks a bit better on mobile phones and tablets and stuff like that. At the minute, it looks nice on a desktop, not so much on phones and stuff like that. So I want to kind of, have a balance between it looking cool on the desktop, but being very functional everywhere else, and try to get it look cool everywhere else. So that's on the to-do list. I'm on all the social medias. You can get me at Tommy Kelly is mostly where I am. That's Tommie, but it's Tommy Kelly Artist on Facebook. Talking to Facebook, there is an Adventures in Woodward page. There is a 47's Facebook group. And it's a really nice group. And if you want to know about 47's, just come in and say hello to everyone. All really, really nice. One of the nicest groups on Facebook. And I'm not just saying that just because it's about 47's. It really is. It's full of really cool people. And it kind of polices itself in that there's no hassle, no one, that nastiness you can get in the cult circles just isn't there whatsoever. And it's, it's a great place. You should check it out. It's, it's just 47's on Facebook. If you search 47's, you'll find it anyway. If you would like to help me financially, you can go to my Patreon, and you can get to that by going to tommiekelly.com, and that's Tommie Kelly.com. And there's loads of stuff there. We do group rituals. We're doing a year-long thing called The Journey, which is about shadow working using Servitor and really getting deep into trying to become better people and trying to discover as much as we can about ourselves to, become better people and have a wider, better, cooler experience of the world. Using magic as in meditation and shadow working, journeying, servitors and all this as our tools. There's loads of PDFs there of my comics. There is the digital download of the deck. There's the PDF of GRIMOIRE of 47's. If you go to the page, tommiekelly.com, or just search Tommy Kelly on Patreon, on the right hand side you'll see all the different tiers and what you can get. I post on Patreon every day. There's always something. I'm very active on Patreon. There's an awful lot goes on over now. We recently did a whole big novena thing to the saint, and that people really enjoyed, and we got an awful lot from, I think. I say there's group rituals every week. On a Wednesday we do a group ritual together. With an astral temple, we've all these things. We're good, and again, that's very welcoming. There's a good community. It's a lot of people from the 47's Facebook group and that kind of stuff there, but it's really nice, and check it out. I do free posts on it too as well, but if most of my free stuff just goes on the blog adventuresinwoodward.com, so you can check that out. I'm going to be putting a PayPal donation button on the website when it gets all done up. Now, I know this drives some people insane, and they really don't like it. But here's what it is. People have asked me to do it, and so I'm going to do it. I'm going to test it out, whatever. If it annoys people too much, it's because people think it's like begging, and I don't know, people have an issue to it as well. It mightn't be so much in the cult circles as it was, but it used to be a huge thing in webcomics where people get really aggressive and nasty about people having PayPal donation buttons on their website. So I kind of had an aversion to that kind of thing. But some people have asked me about it, so I'm just going to put it up there. See how it goes. That'll be when I reorganise the site and rechange it around as well. But for the time being, the best way to support me, if you don't want to spend your hard-earned cash, is to just share the podcast, the videos, the webpage, or come talk to me, like the stuff, leave a review on Amazon or the Gamecraft or anything. There's absolutely loads of things you can do that I would massively appreciate that doesn't involve you paying any money whatsoever. So yeah, good people of the internet, that was my podcast. I was going to say rambling, meandering, and I'm going, I really have to get out of making excuses or apologising for my podcast. That's obviously a major thing I have to do, have to work on for myself, is my apologetic nature, and just be more forceful about that's what I said, here you go, and be done with it. But good people of the internet, may you have a wonderful week. May you have good fun with your servitors. May they work really well. May they bring you everything that you could possibly want, and may life challenge you in all the good ways so that you become a better, more wiser person. And I always want to say, may all your dreams come true, and then hold back, because that thing, may all your dreams come true. When you get everything you want, many of your dreams will be destroyed, whatever that saying is. But so may you have a wonderful week. There you go. That's the best. May you have some really precious moments that you'll stick with you till the rest of your life. And good people of the internet, be well.